Birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, whatever the occasion, it just got a little more personal with meaningful photo gifts from Shutterfly. Add a silly photo to a gold-rimmed mug for your bestie. Put your sweet puppy on a cozy fleece blanket for your teen. Gift your husband a desktop plaque featuring all the kids. Enjoy 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's a special spring edition of the Bears podcast because I don't know if everybody remembers this. There was a draft last week. And so with me is Mike Pusateri. He's going to we're going to talk about the Bears draft. We're going to break it down in detail. We're going to go through every pick. We're going to talk for hours about the Bears draft. And then because I am holding him hostage, I have a whole bunch of TV stuff I want to talk to him about. So, Mike, how are you?
There ain't no draft no more, son. There was one?
I saw you tweeted that
out. I'm doing well. I do need to clear something up before we begin because there's been a lot of stuff, social media controversy about this.
Uh-oh.
I want to make this very clear. I am not the person who leaked the story out of the Supreme Court. I am not the leaker.
No.
So get off me, people. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing well. Ready to we've got a whole if folks heard the beer cracking open that Andy just did, that's
I feel bad. We didn't there's no remember this crap this week. It'll be back next week. Donahue always makes sure, and sometimes you can hear he ends up in the bag in quite a few of these. You'll hear multiple cracks of beers as Mike is
okay.
So that's kind of an homage.
Yeah, nice.
The other Mike.
Very good. Yeah, bourbon doesn't crack, so you won't hear me drinking.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mike, where can everyone see what you're up to these days?
All the fine folks can find me as always on the Twitters at Mike Pusateri, and hit me up on IMDb. I am Mike Pusateri 2.
As always, you can find this podcast and the subscription newsletter at pointlessexercise.com. And if you go to Decipio.com, you can buy a Valus Jones School of Technology t-shirt.
I saw that. That's handsome.
Yes.
John
Greenberg basically told me I had to make one, so I did.
Yeah. And you can also get a Prospect Pervert t-shirt, too.
Yes, you can. Yes, I stole that right from Andrew Cieslak.
Nice.
I'll steal from the best.
There you go.
So the Bears, they had 6 draft picks. Is that right? Six.
The start.
6 draft picks. None in the first round because they traded that pick away last year for some guy named Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year they took with the remaining picks they had, and they loaded up on offense to help make Justin Fields the quarterback that we all think that he can be. He used them all on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, that's right. They didn't.
No, they did not. They did not.
And it didn't just irritate Bear fans. It enraged several of them.
Yes.
I understand that. However, it certainly looks like, and I'm no Mel Kiper because I'm vaccinated.
That's right.
Their first 2 picks, I mean, the defense was pretty fucking bad too. You and I know, we had to talk about it every week.
Yeah. Those
2 guys look like they're probably pretty good players.
Those 2 cornerbacks look like they're going to be, mainstays on that defense for, 4, 5, 6 years. That is great.
Yep.
The problem I have, and we've talked about this before, and if you're only listening for the first time, people, go listen to our Bears podcast. You'll get enlightened and you'll know all this stuff.
There's 18 of them from last year.
Yeah.
A season preview, and then every week Oh, and then and then we had to do one when they fired everybody, and then we had to do one when they hired the new guys. So there's 20.
There's loads of entertainment out there for you.
Pause this. Go listen to those 20 podcasts. Come back.
Come back in 4 weeks when you're done and start listening. But the thing that we talked about, one of the things was that it's really not all that difficult for an NFL team to develop a competent defense. The Bears themselves have done that very well throughout their history. The thing that is really, 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 really difficult to do is to develop a top 5 state-of-the-art NFL offense, which is arguably something the Bears have never done. So when you hire Eberflus, you're like, oh, here we go, another defensive guy. And then you see these first picks going on quarterbacks. It kind of made me feel a little bit like, this is kind of the same old thing, even though I think those two guys are great. They could have great careers. That defense does need a lot of help, as you said. But again, a competent NFL defense is not relatively that hard to build. A great offense is.
Mike, how quickly you forget. Do we need to go through the HITS philosophy again? The H is for.
The H is for. That's how I love you. How that's hits and how hits. Hey, coach. Yeah. So,
does it make you feel any better, though, that the first 2 picks, cornerback Kyler Gordon from Washington and safety Jaquan Brisker, that's how good he is, from Penn State, the last 2 years, do you know how many penalties combined those 2 guys committed?
Well, see, I don't know. It can't be many if you're citing this.
It is a ridiculous number. It is 0.
0 is a low number.
Neither one of them was called for a single penalty in the last 2 seasons.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what the P in HITS is for. It's penalties. Avoid
penalties. Yes.
That was just kind of a unique thing. So really, I think where it gets down to, Ryan Poles obviously got asked about this. And what he said was the receivers that they really liked were guys they were going to go in the first round, and they didn't have any ammo to trade up. If they trade up to try to get the first round, you're just Ryan Pace again. And one of the big problems the Bears have on their current roster is because Pace kept trading picks to get the guy he really had to have. Mm-hmm. There's very little good young talent on the Bears at any position.
Right.
And Poles basically said we just couldn't do that. We couldn't sacrifice a pick to move up to get somebody. Mm-hmm. So I think the head scratcher, though, was when not so much that they picked the 2 defensive guys in the second round, because if you get guys that project to be starters for you, that's kind of what you're looking for in the second round.
Right.
It's in the third round where they took they flipped through the Jed Hoyer playbook and they went out to find the oldest rookie they could find, and that would be not Velvet Jones. Although if it had really been Velvet Jones, I would have been completely for it. I wouldn't have bothered me at all. It was Velus Jones Jr.
Yes.
And even he, though, everybody gets hung up on the fact that he's 25 years old, which is weird.
Yeah.
A lot of picks were a year older than typical this year because
of COVID.
Everybody got an extra year if they needed it of eligibility for COVID. He's actually even another year older because he transferred from USC to Tennessee.
Right.
He is he has a really odd distinction, however. He was all Pac-12 and all SEC in his career,
which is very impressive. Yeah,
he led the nation in yards after catch last year, and he is he's an accomplished kick returner. The problem you get into is when they're like, "Oh, he's basically a smaller Cordero Patterson." Like, we had the adult size one, and it wasn't that fun.
Yeah, right.
You don't need a smaller one.
No.
Poles claimed that he sat down, him and Fields watched film of the top receivers in the draft. And Justin had a few guys that he wanted, that he liked. And Velus was on the list of guys that Justin Fields said, "Hey, I like this guy. Let's get this guy." He was probably thinking, "Hey, this would be a good guy to use a 6th-round draft pick on."
Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't mean draft him that high.
Justin called. I didn't put a 3rd-round grade on Velus Jones.
Yeah, well, and in 5 years, Velus Jones can start at first base for the Cubs. So that's the other good part about all this. Yeah.
I think they meant it as I think they meant it like to be reassuring, and then I took it as a joke, and then it was basically it's not that big of a deal to draft a 25-year-old because the average NFL career is only 3 years long.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
he is older than James Daniels.
Great.
But that got used as an example because James Daniels, one of the assets, one of the things that Pace bragged about when the Bears picked him was that he was only 20 years old.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's great. But then it's also that you bring a 20-year-old into the NFL, it's probably a bigger adjustment than a 22-year-old.
For sure.
And I'm sure at some point that it all caught up, and I'm sure James Daniels will do fine for the Steelers this year, as that's what he's playing for now.
Yeah.
With Mitch. Oh, speaking of the first round of the draft, which we kind of did, how about Mitch getting to play the Mike Glennon role? Signing with the team as to be their starter, and then sit there during the draft party and go, "Oh, they drafted a quarterback in the first round."
It is a role that Mitch was born for. Though
I hear somewhere Glennon was like, "Aha, fuck you."
How do you like me now, Mitch?
So we get to day 3 of the draft, and the Bears have 3 picks. And everybody's like, that's not enough. The Bears went into the draft with 55 players on their roster. You can have 90.
Yeah.
They had 55.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Ryan Poles, though, he was well aware of that. And a blizzard of trades, he turned 3 picks into 8.
Yes.
And old Hub lost his shit.
Hub didn't like that, did he?
No, Hub didn't really like anything.
The hubcap. Yeah.
He's like, oh, the one trade is great. Now you're starting to outsmart yourself. And it's like, Hub, the whole idea, right? The last 3 rounds, they're all lottery tickets.
They're all lottery picks. Yeah, you might as well get more lottery
Poles
tickets.
is just trading lottery tickets for more lottery tickets.
Yeah, I had no problem at all with what he did there.
And in fact, there are a lot of people who think
that
the guy they picked, not the former Dolphins linebacker, Zach Thomas, but the Zach Thomas from, I believe, San Diego State. Is that where he's from? That the Bears took. There are a lot of people who think he has a chance to be really good. And that, although this might tell you where the Bears' offensive line stands right now, could very well be the starter at right guard.
Right. Well, that's where Chris Bryant went, right? San Diego State?
San Diego.
He just went to San Diego.
He went to San Diego. He didn't go
to the state. Yeah. Well, the thing is, there's no difference between pick number 158 or 151 and 168. It's all the same. So that was a very intelligent move. Yeah, might as well load up on lottery picks. They're young guys who are under 25, and see what we got.
So all of the fact, after their first day of the draft, which was the second day, hadn't taken any offensive linemen. They got 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Didn't have a punter because, well, what's his name? I can't even think of his name. I'm telling you, it's a Packer now.
Let's go Brad Maynard whenever we talk about punters.
Maury Buford has moved up.
Let's go with more. How about Bob Parsons? How about Bob?
Why can't I think of the punter's name? He was the longest tenured Bear. He'd been there for 10 years.
All-time Bears punter, Bob Parsons.
No, doesn't matter now. Everybody's yelling at their radio.
It's late.
So anyway, they kind of addressed that. Then in undrafted free agents, they went nuts. Signed 20 of them. So now they got a full roster. It's bad, but it's a full roster.
Yes.
But some intriguing names on the undrafted free agent list, like Jake Tongs, which looks like tongues. He's a tight end from Cal. How about this guy, Master Teague from Ohio State, a running back.
Great name. Gotta like that.
Master Teague. He's got to make it just on name alone.
Yes, for sure.
They got a guy from Duquesne, Cyrus Holder.
Right.
Landon Lenore from SIU. So
we really cleaned up on names here.
A guy that a lot of because there's way too many like University of Wisconsin guys in our media. They're very excited about Jack Sanborn, linebacker from Wisconsin, who a lot of people had as a 6th round pick, and the Bears got him as an undrafted free agent.
Wow, what a coup.
And somebody said, well, he'll start at the Sam linebacker for the Bears.
Yeah.
And they're like, really? And then I guess Eberflus explained that the way they run the defense, the Sam linebacker plays about 10% of the snaps.
Pat O'Donnell.
Pat O'Donnell. I'm sorry, Pat. I forgot. Led the league in punting the last few years because he always had a lot of field in front of him. He could just let it boom.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about directional punting when you're kicking from your own 20 all the time.
Right. Just let her rip.
They didn't draft a long snapper. Worried about that. They still have Patrick Scales, but he's, it's about time to waste a draft pick on a long snapper so you have a backup.
So what does all this say about the upcoming season?
Oh, they're going to be bad. That's what it says.
And
it sounds like they're kind of going to be bad on purpose.
Kind of does. But they're not going to call it a rebuild, I'm sure. But they're going to be kind of bad.
So apparently the reason that they have to downplay the fact that they're rebuilding, because it really sounds like Poles has like a 2-year plan to get the Bears back to greatness.
Oh boy.
And year one was basically get all the crap off the roster so we have copious amounts to spend next year, and don't do anything to cost yourself a draft pick. So you have a full. He wants a year from now for them to they'll have $120 million worth of cap,
right? And
they'll have all their picks, and then which he can then maybe turn into even more picks,
right?
But they said that George is like super averse to the word rebuild. So they said you'll never hear Poles or Eberflus say it.
Okay.
Even though it's clearly what they're doing.
You're right.
It's clear once they traded Khalil, that was basically, and they let Akeem Hicks go. It's basically like, okay, we're not even going to try to just patch. We're not going to try to limp along and go 9-8.
Yeah. We're going to do that. So George has Tom and Jed on speed dial, basically. Is that what's going on?
Oh, they're just not telling George. George doesn't know they're not rebuilding. George thinks they're trying to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
Because they can't tell him because he get mad.
And he would buy the fact that, we are trying to win the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah.
They told him before the draft, we're a Master Teague away from beating the Packers.
Right. All we need is a 25-year-old rookie.
We got it. George, holy shit, we did it.
George, we can corner the market on 25-year-old rookies and watch this team take off like a rocket. Yeah.
It would be great, wouldn't it, if George Googled Velus Jones right after the pick and ended up watching the Velvet Jones
the Eddie Murphys. Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, he's an entrepreneur. You might want to pay attention to the whole video. I like Mom, I had never.
Mom, come here. Watch it.
Yeah, they showed the second one where Velvet is doing the calisthenics, which I had forgotten about. That's maybe my favorite Velvet Jones bit.
Yeah.
Velvet. I don't know if you remember when Eddie came back to SNL in 2019. Velvet also made an appearance. Mm-hmm. He was a contestant on Black Jeopardy, where all the answers were him with a new book to plug. He would just pull one out. It's like, this is not a talk show. You're supposed to answer the questions. But I just feel to be fine. He's got an all-pro tight end in Cole Kmet.
Yeah, right.
He's got a heavy-legged running back, Dave Montgomery. Everybody got to have one of those. Now you do kind of wonder now. You get into free agency 2.0 because there are a bunch of free agents who don't sign until after the draft. Like real free agents, not off the street rookie free agents. Right. Guys who didn't get the offer they want in the first decide, okay, let's wait till after the draft. Teams will be like, shit, we didn't fill this need. Now we got to spend some money. There's also the opportunity that the Bears might make trades for next year's draft picks. And there's already talk that, what could they get for Robert Quinn?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What could you get for David Montgomery? Mm-hmm. I would trade both of those guys in a heartbeat.
Well, first of all, there's no bigger Bob Quinn fan than you. I think we've established that.
I love him. 2 years ago, nobody loved him more than I did 2 years ago. Big play Bob. It's great.
Right. And your point about Montgomery has always been, he's a good running back, but those guys are relatively easy to find in the NFL.
It's a dime a dozen. I have a feeling there really is there's no market for Montgomery, I don't think.
Probably not. Yeah.
He was a third round pick originally I don't think you could get a third-round pick for him now because teams would be like,
I wouldn't think so.
yeah, he's pretty good, but we have to pay him more.
Yes.
And
Right.
he's older now, and we've been watching the film, and you guys managed to get him hit right at the handoff on every play. He has to break 4 tackles to get to the line of scrimmage. How many miles does he have left on him?
Yeah, probably not that many more. Yeah.
I do think they might be able to get, a decent pick for Quinn. And then the reason you would do it is we're not going to be very good. And he's never put 2 good years back to back.
So I know we want to talk about.
He had a great year last year. What are the odds he has a good year this year? But he's old. I don't know if he has much value.
So I know we want to talk about television and Better Call Saul and things like this. But one thing I do want to, before we depart the Bears portion of this, one thing that has seemed to be talked about quite a bit recently, for I'm not exactly sure why, is this notion that the Bears are supposedly not committed to Justin Fields. And I think this is largely a media-driven narrative that certain guys with access to grind are putting out there. But what are your thoughts on this situation?
Ryan Poles took the job. A big part of the reason he took it was because Justin Fields was on the roster.
Right.
Eberflus, he said that, but I think Matt would have taken any job.
He would have said it. He was gonna, I love Mitch. Mitch is great. Oh, you got Mike Phipps? Mike Phipps, fantastic. We can build around Mike. Mike, we got the Phipps. We got H in Phipps. That's the P.
I mean, it's not like they haven't given him anything. I mean, they signed Equinemius St. Brown. I mean, come on.
See, there you go.
Right. They got Byron Pringle, and then Byron went out and got himself arrested for doing donuts in a parking lot in Florida.
Wait, the man quite literally is a saint, and they signed him. So let's give him credit.
Now, so Equinemius St. Brown is the one who went to Notre Dame. His brother, Amon-Ra St. Brown, went to USC. Do you know he has another brother? And do you know what that brother's name is?
Daryl? Is it Daryl?
That's right, Daryl, his other brother, Daryl. Osiris.
Like the Warriors, Cyrus.
Osiris, which is like an Egyptian. Amon-Ra, some kind of like Egyptian god. Osiris. Yeah. Equinemius, I think the dad just thought it sounded cool.
We should. I know I'm getting. We should. Are you a Warriors fan? The movie The Warriors.
I've seen it a couple of times. Yeah.
Okay, because that might be at some point a movie.
Warriors, come on,
play. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Speaking of Cyrus, we should think about that. All right, but back to the Bears and Justin Fields. We are both big Justin Fields fans. We believe the Bears are committed to him. There has been this narrative started by some out there that the Bears are supposedly not as committed to them as they say they are. But your take on that is?
I think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You could say this about almost all the first-round quarterbacks last year. Had he been in the draft this year, he's the number 1 pick in the draft.
Right.
He didn't do anything to scare you. It wasn't like, holy shit, this guy can't play. Right. There were moments that were terrible, but we know he was being hamstrung by the dumbest coach in the NFL. And there were moments where his talent was undeniable. It's like, holy shit, look at this.
Right.
I think that I think it's safe to say the plan for him this year is, they're putting in the new offense with the great Luke Getsy. He's going to put the Packer offense in. And I think the plan really is we're going to protect him, even if it means we have to keep extra blockers in and do whatever. And we're going to become a functional NFL offense. One that we can project that in a year from now, if we add an impact player or two to the offense, all of a sudden we're good. Right. I think their whole plan this year is to have a competent NFL offense, which they didn't have last year.
Right.
It's not going to be all that exciting, I don't think. But they've got a lot to figure out. They got to figure out, are Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borom your tackles? And if they are, which side is which? Because apparently in it's not training camp, whatever they call it, that they just had, minicamp.
Yeah.
They were the tackles, but Larry was the left tackle. Tevin was the right tackle. I don't care. I just don't want to see Justin Fields get sacked 9 times and a half, again, like he did in Cleveland.
Well, that's the other goal of this season, right? Is to get Justin Fields through it healthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have Trevor Siemian to be his backup, so we're set. Just needs to take a week off.
None to
We're
worry.
going to Trev.
Yeah, he's the Andrelton Simmons of the Bears quarterback room.
I thought the big news draft week, not just for the Bears, but for just in general, was the Bears agreeing to release Nick Foles.
Yes.
End of an era.
What an earthquake that was, yeah.
Sure, he can go somewhere where he can beat Tom Brady again.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got on the Bears, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a transition year. That's probably the best way we think we could say about it, right? It's a
maybe
transition.
They'll shock. Maybe they'll thrill the nation with their T formation. They'll win the Super Bowl a year early.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Probably, yeah. Probably not.
I'll spend an hour talking about the Cubs.
Okay, great.
Did you enjoy the Crosstown Classic?
Did not. No. The Cubs, they're bad, but they don't have to be. They don't have to be this bad.
No.
Their manager is starting guys and making weird decisions that are just really exasperating the problem. And the one thing I just want to say about this, since we're talking about the Cubs, is because I see a lot. You and I think charitably said, okay, let's. We don't really know about David Ross. Let's see what he can do. The more we see, the less confident I think we have, the less confidence we have in him.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that, they hired Ross not to be the head of this rebuild of a young team that's coming up. No, they hired him to win another World Series with his buddies.
The plan was they were going to have two cracks at it, 20 and 21.
Right.
And
right.
Then maybe Dave would have to endure a quick retooling of the Cubs.
Exactly.
Then the pandemic came, and 2020 ended up being a short season. And for 3 weeks, he looked like a genius. He went 13-3.
Right. But the point is, they didn't. They hired him to be like, okay, you're the guy. You can be the red ass who can get your buddies to play hard because evidently they felt Joe Madden couldn't.
He's never done that. The only guy he ever yelled at was Wilson Contreras because Wilson was basically saying what everybody could see, which was that nobody was playing hard.
Right. But now that's not the case, obviously. Now they're in the middle of a rebuild. My point is, they did not hire David Ross to be the manager of a rebuild.
Well, they gave him a contract extension to be the manager of a rebuild.
Yes, which is ridiculous.
Yes, but there was no reason to do that. None.
There are very few managers who can take a championship, caliber team and win a World Series. There's very few of those guys. There's very few guys who could take a young, super talented team and rebuild them into something a la Joe Madden. There's very few of those guys. There's almost no guys who can do both. Right. And yet David Ross, who's never managed a day in his life prior to 2020, he's the guy who could win you another championship and the guy who can rebuild your team. This makes absolutely no sense to me.
Joe Madden never finished second on the Dancing with the Stars.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, no. It is funny too to they get the constant criticism of Joe. He walked the guy with the bases loaded in the fourth inning. Yeah. Does this, makes this crazy moves, make that crazy move.
Right.
He's really holding the Angels back this year. They're in first place with, I believe, the best record. It's the second best record in the American League. Only the
6 games over.
Yankees.
Yeah.
7. They're 17-10. They're in first place.
Right. It's pretty good.
It kind of blows that whole. And then he's what an idiot. He's got to prove how smart he is. He walked out with the base loaded. They won that game.
They won the game. They won it handily, by the way.
Yeah.
And they've pretty much gone on winning since then. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but hey, you got to hand it to David Ross. It's hard to lose your DH, but he managed to do it in the second game of the White Sox series because he had to have Yan Gomes pinch hit for Alfonso Rivas.
It drives me insane. Why not let Rivas take that at bat? You idiot!
Yes.
I know he's a lefty, but who cares?
Oh, but Gomes, he had a line shot.
Oh.
I heard Brett Taylor going on about how it's like I saw it, and Tim Anderson had to move like one step to his left and still had to wait for the ball to get to him. I don't know that it
Yeah.
was a line shot.
Yeah, I don't think that was 125 miles per hour of exit velocity there. It wasn't that much of a shot. It's just dumb.
That's okay. Dumb. We just wait until the waves of talent arrive from the minors. It's gonna be amazing.
Well, look, here's the thing. I do think they have a lot of talent on the minors, but the point is good. That it's not supposed to be. You either have a good major league team or talent in the minors. No, you're supposed to have both.
Yep, and they could have done exactly what they did. Yeah. And had the exact guys in the minor leagues they have now, and they could have spent money and had an actual competitive team in the majors right now.
Exactly right.
But and they decided to just do one of the two, not both, because it's a lot cheaper to do it this way.
That's right. Because if you hire the major league team, like why isn't Carlos Rodon on this team, for example? Mm-hmm. Guy only costs you money, no draft picks, nothing. You could have stacked the roster with guys like that. And hey, if you catch lightning in a bottle and you're competitive, great. If you don't,
then you trade them.
You trade them and you get more prospects, which is what some Cubs blockers, that's all they want anyway. So why not spend the money?
Say they did exactly what they did, but they had two Carloses. Carlos Rodon and Carlos Correa.
Okay.
And then this like, oh shit, this team still isn't any good. At the trade deadline, you trade Carlos Rodon and you trade Carlos Correa, and now you have even more prospects.
You get a haul. And I don't mean a Nick Madrigal haul. I mean an actual haul of players.
How about Nick Madrigal? Was it last night? Finally gets a hit. It wasn't a hit, though. Right. It turns out that Luis Robert caught it. But just kept running like a little leaguer. Like he forgot that you're supposed to stop at first base. He's out by 40 feet running to second
easily.
Base.
Yeah. Yeah. It's terrific.
And now there's talk, but if nothing else, what the Cubs have found is that Nico Horner is their shortstop of the future. It's like, I haven't seen that.
No.
He's handled himself better at shortstop defensively than I thought he would. He's still not really hitting. I mean, thankfully he's at 2 home runs. I didn't think I'd ever see him hit 2 home runs. He's what he is he should be your second baseman.
We love Nico as a second baseman. Yes. He'd be a great second baseman.
And I have a feeling that's where he's going to end up. Because I have a feeling at some point they're going to look at Madrigal and go, all right, playing the dwarf at second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's
the thing. That White Sox team is not very good.
No.
At all.
I mean, I think they're a slightly above average team when healthy, and they are certainly not healthy. So they're bad right now. And the Cubs couldn't take advantage of that.
Right. And I like the narrative is always like, oh, wait till we get our guys healthy. Okay, first of all, Lance Lynn is like 87 years old. Is he going to be any good? And even if guys get healthy, that doesn't mean your other guys aren't going to get injured.
Right. They'll get Eloy back for a week, and then he'll hurt himself again.
Right.
I thought Robert separated his shoulder and he crashed into the wall. He fell down and laid on the warning track.
I mean, yeah. What?
Yeah.
It's disheartening to watch this Cubs team. I just don't get it.
Yeah. But hey, they got it easy this weekend. They're only playing the Dodgers, so
that'll be a blast.
They're on Sunday Night Baseball, and you're getting Boog because Carl Ravage's hairpiece has the COVID.
Oh, I didn't know. So Boog's doing the TV.
Boog will do the TV.
Oh my!
So
how exciting!
You get a full weekend of Boog, not just 2 days.
Yes, Boog blocked me on Twitter. I still have no idea why.
That's funny because I'm Mr. Positive about the Cubs. He has not blocked me. He enjoys reading my stuff.
He enjoys getting smacked around by you, apparently.
Because I don't really pick on Boog very much, but I
neither do I.
Certainly do not say nice things about his employer.
Right.
So there's that. So,
there we go.
Well, speaking of TV,
yes.
How about that for a segue?
Good segue. I like it.
So I prepped for the final season. Although it's this is just we're only getting the first half of the final season. Then we got to wait a few months, and then you get the second half of the final season of Better Call Saul by reading Bob Odenkirk's book. Comedy,
drama.
Yes, which I enjoyed very much.
Yeah.
He writes exactly like he talks.
Yeah.
Like exactly. Like you can just hear the whole time you hear Bob. Even you don't need the audiobook. You can hear Bob talking to you.
Right.
But he's got a lot of good stories. But one of the things that he one of the things that he talked about a lot was his kind of process for getting into character as Jimmy Saul.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he said that the trick to it is there's like a pattern that Saul, the way Saul is written and the way he acts it, there's a pattern. And he said that the easiest way he found to get into it and stay into it was to listen to the audiobook, The Kid Stays in the Picture by Robert Evans.
Ha! Nice. Love it.
So I have seen the documentary, The Kid Stays in the Picture with Robert Evans, which is
it's
all Robert. He's basically narrates it. It's amazing. It's just
great.
It's
Robert Evans, for those listening who don't know, the Godfather.
Yes,
he was the man.
He was an actor who was in some pretty big movies, but always just as I mean, he was never a main actor in anything. And he wanted to be a producer, and he ended up getting hired as the head of production at Paramount before he'd ever produced a movie. He was the head of production for a movie studio.
Incredible.
If you have never seen the documentary, you should watch it. If you've never, it's worth it. The audiobook he reads his own book.
Yeah.
So you get the full Robert Evans thing.
It's a great book, by the way. It's a great book. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. He'll tell a story about an actress. Ava Gardner. She had just broken up with Sinatra. She was depressed. She didn't like me. Blah 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 blah. Did we have a torrid affair? Of course we did. He just throws in all the women he had sex with. It's very subtle how he does it. There's a scene in I don't know how to keep all these together. So Better Call Saul,
right?
But Odenkirk is listening to Robert on Paramount Plus. There's a series right now called The Offer, which is about the making of The Godfather.
Yes.
And the actor Matthew Good plays Robert Evans, and he is perfect. He has the voice. It's exact. I didn't realize how exact until I literally watched one of the episodes. I hopped in my car and I had the audiobook in it, and I was like, holy shit, it's the same guy.
Couldn't tell the difference.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a scene in it where Robert Evans is married to Ally McGraw. And they're sitting by the pool. And he's just sitting there, and he looks over, he goes, Ellie, have you ever had sex in a pool? And she looks at him, and she just jumps in the pool. It's in the book. He tells the same story in his own book. That's why they put it in the movie.
Right.
So the Robert Evans book, it's a little problematic listening to it. There are two guys in it that he is super, he can't say enough nice things about two guys.
Okay.
Roman Polanski.
Okay.
And Henry Kissinger.
Oh.
He loves him. Roman Polanski, he's not only the most talented director he's ever seen, probably the most talented actor ever. If you ever saw a movie that Roman Polanski was in, he was an amazing actor. Like nobody has ever seen a movie that Roman Polanski was in.
No. Right. Okay.
And he claims he saved Kissinger's job.
How did he do that?
Okay, so they somehow became acquaintances, and Nixon was going to fire Kissinger. Right. And Kissinger calls Robert Evans and says, "I need you to come out to some golf course in L.A. We need to talk." He gets out there, and it's Secret Service, and then just him and Henry. And they take a walk on the golf course because Henry needs to, he's worried people might be listening. Tells him Nixon's going to fire him, and he's like, "I got to come up with, some kind of strategy so I don't get fired." And Evans is like, "What are you asking me for?" And he's like, "Because you think different."
Okay.
So Evans says for the next 3 hours, he throws out idea after idea after idea, and Kissinger's like, "No, you're throwing out, you're saying stuff that politicians would think of. We got to come up with other stuff." So when Evans has a friend at Time Magazine. Tell you what, I'm going to get a spread on you in Time Magazine. The whole angle is going to be the greatest decision Richard Nixon ever made was hiring you to be Secretary of State.
Okay, all right.
Once that's in there, how is Nixon possibly going to fire you?
Can't.
Week later, big spread in Time Magazine, also in Life Magazine, because they're owned by the same company.
Which was big back then, yes.
Henry calls him and he says, Robert, you can continue to call me at this number. And Evan's like, I got it. It's like, what the fuck? He does tell great stories about he produced Love Story, which he put his wife in, Ally McGraw.
Ally McGraw, right?
And,
Ally McGraw.
And he said they tried to cast every leading actor in Hollywood, including Walter Matthau. Would you have loved to have seen Love Story with Walter Matthau and Ally McGraw? Everybody said no.
Right.
And they ended up hiring a guy from a soap opera from Peyton Place. It was Ryan O'Neal. And, of course, the movie goes on. It's this huge, sappy hit. People can't get enough of it. And they're at the they're getting ready to go to the premiere. Mm-hmm. And Allie's 7 months pregnant. And her doctor says, I really think we should probably put her on bed rest for the next 2 months, just to make sure. And Evans is like, that's nonsense. People used to have babies out in fields while they were working, and they would scoop the baby up, and they'd keep picking the okra.
People have been having babies for years in this town, kid.
She's coming to the premiere. So they go to the premiere. Everybody loves the movie. They go to the after party. Ryan O'Neal comes up to him and says, I owe my entire career to you. I would do anything for you. Mm-hmm. This is and they look over, and Allie is bleeding. They have to rush her to the hospital.
Oh, no. My goodness.
They're worried she had a miscarriage. Well, it turns out she didn't have a miscarriage, but obviously something was wrong, so they've got her in the hospital. While he's in the hospital, Evans claims he gets a call from somebody who works for him at Paramount. Says the day after the premiere, Allie and Ryan O'Neal were supposed to go do some press. Mm-hmm. They're saying Ryan wants to know if Allie's going to come do the press. And he's like, well, no, he was there when she hemorrhaged. I mean, she's in the hospital. So Ryan says he won't do it unless Allie does it. And Evans is like, tell him he's doing it. And he hangs up. And they call back. And they said, Ryan says he won't do it unless Allie does it. And he's like, that's what you need to know. That's how much Ryan O'Neal was really indebted to me. I gave him his whole contract. And a day later, he wouldn't cover for my bleeding wife at a press event.
Okay.
So there's that. And then there's this whole thing, which I'm sure will get covered in the offer.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the first 3 episodes. I say that like anyone can see the first 3 episodes.
Right. Are those free? Are the first 3 free on Paramount Plus? Is that the deal? Or those are the only 3 that have been released?
Only 3 that have been released.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I'm boycotting it because as you know, I was
right. You were up
for a major role in that. I don't want to say what it was. I don't want to say what it was.
You were up for the Ally McGraw, and you didn't want to jump in the pool to tell.
I was up for Ally McGraw. I was afraid of water, and I couldn't do it. But yes, I'll watch it eventually. But yes, so go on.
The guy who plays Al Pacino, was that what the role he wrote? Or was Al Pacino?
Yeah, it was not Al.
The guy who plays Al Pacino, if you close your eyes, it's Al Pacino.
I have seen.
The voice is incredible.
He's good.
Here's the thing about The Offer. The Offer is not good.
That's what I've read.
But it is immensely entertaining. Like, I am enjoying it.
Yeah.
I plowed through the first 3. I was only going to watch the first episode. I ended up watching all 3 of them. Spent 3 hours instead of an hour. Right. And I'm sitting there going, this is objectively not high quality. But
you're having a good time.
I'm eating it all up. I'm going to watch all 10. There's 10 episodes.
I know.
About one movie. I mean, it was a long movie. But still, 10 episodes is an awful lot.
Yeah. Well, that's a limited series. Yeah.
Evans tells a story about cast Pacino. He did not want Pacino. And in the 3rd episode ends with a hilarious scene with Matthew Good as Bob Evans chewing out Hal Roddy, which is Miles Teller, about trying to about A, how long the script is, and B, the trying to cast Al Pacino.
Right.
I don't remember the guy. They'd already cast Sonny. They don't get into this yet in the offer, but in the book he talks about it. And the guy who was going to play Sonny was 6'5". And he's telling him, it's like, one of the reasons we can't cast Pacino is it's going to be Mutt and Jeff. You're going to have a 6'5" guy and a 5'5" guy, and nobody's going to believe that they're brothers.
Right.
And so they finally wear him down, and he had made this huge deal about how the reason the gangster movies had always failed in the past was because Hollywood would always cast Jewish actors as Italians, and they were going to use real Italians, which was then I got very amused by what he did to finally agree to cast Pacino. He said, fine, you can have Al Pacino as long as we fire the guy who's going to play Sonny and we cast James Caan.
Right.
I'm like, wait, all right, what are we? So
there's a great scene in The Sopranos when Sil and Tony are talking about something, and it's something that like everybody knows this one thing, and the analogy they use, yeah, it's like not knowing that James Caan isn't Italian. and Sonny and Sil and Tony just look at each other like, mm-hmm. Wait, he's not Italian? I thought he was Italian this whole time.
So Hal Roddy's girlfriend in the show is the woman who owned the Chateau Marmont at the time.
Oh yes, the great Chateau Marmont.
Yes,
historic place.
And the actress who plays her is unbelievably beautiful. And I believe she's Czechoslovakian. So the lady who owned the Chateau Marmont, Francois, I believe is her first name.
Okay.
Is supposed to be from Paris. In fact, she tells a lot of threatening stories about how she gets threatened by Meyer Lansky and by other people because the Italians really don't want the movie being made.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And she tells a story about how she'd already had a run. Meyer Lansky's going to have a run-in with her boyfriend about this. She tells a story about how Meyer went into the chateau and basically told her that he was taking over all of the food and beverage delivery business for the chateau, and she said, I stared down the Nazis. I'm not giving in to you. Right. The accent that this actress has is completely indecipherable. It's just, you listen to it like, what? I don't. But she's great to look at.
Now, should we talk the people know who died at the Chateau Marmont, or you are aware of this? I assume.
Jim Belushi's brother.
That's right.
Yes.
John Belushi.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Chateau Marmont, known as the Castle on Sunset here in Hollywood. Very famous historic place.
Yeah, so anyway, so the offer, it's on Paramount Plus. If the only people who get Paramount Plus are people who either want to watch Champions League soccer.
Well, or if you want to watch 1883, which is excellent.
Oh, that's true. And that is what comes every time an episode of The Offer ends, they immediately recommend 1883.
Yeah, they should.
Clearly they're so close.
It's good. Have you seen it?
No.
It's really good.
I also haven't seen I haven't even seen Yellowstone.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen Yellowstone either, but I've seen 1883.
It's the Tim McGraw Faith Hill prequel.
It's great. It's great.
Okay. Anyway, so back to Better Call Saul.
Okay. Yes.
The reason I want to bring up Better Call Saul, because by now, if you haven't watched it, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for. It might be the best show on TV.
It's right up there.
Ridiculous. Odenkirk tells a story about how when Vince Gilligan, who everyone says is the nicest man in Hollywood, comes to him with the idea. Actually, there was a stagehand who, during while they were filming Breaking Bad, basically said, "Hey, when we do the Saul Goodman spinoff, I want to work on it." And Gilligan claims that actually kind of gave him planted the seed.
Really?
In his mind, maybe we could do something with this character. And they were originally going to do a sitcom.
Oh.
And then they realized right away that seems stupid.
Right.
So I forget what other story I was going to tell. Anyway, so yeah, Better Call Saul. There is a podcast called what is it called? Oh, Better Call Saul Insider. And it's a podcast that is done by the people who make Better Call Saul.
Mhm.
And so every week, like this last week, the episode was directed by Ray Seahorn. So she's on it with Vince Gilligan and with a couple of the producers, and with they try to pick somebody, like if there's a really cool like in the I don't want to do any spoilers, but in the third episode,
Right.
there was a very intricate stunt. So when they had the main actor from that episode was also on, but then so was someone who could talk about how they figured out how to have him jump out of a air conditioning hole in his hotel room.
Right. So
And there was a
Michael
weird,
Mandow was on the pod.
yes, and there was also a weird thing where there was something he had to hide in, and they
I'd be
go
very
into great
interested to hear that.
detail about how much of that was practical, how much of it was. It's not going to spoil anything. There's an oil tanker.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's an oil tank. Yeah.
And what scenes they could actually shoot in with the oil tanker, and that they had to actually build. They had to build a set.
Yeah.
So that something that happens in the oil tanker could happen in a more controlled environment. But he said he had to hold his breath for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway. It's a great podcast because of that. Somebody actually, in one of the reviews, they complained they don't talk about the plot enough. And it's like, really, you need another explainer? And they do talk about the plot. They'll bring usually the person who wrote the episode is on.
Mm-hmm.
But they talk about all the interesting shit that you wouldn't think of. Like in this last episode, they talk about, this also won't be a spoiler. At the beginning of the episode, two people look up, and there's a house being painted a garish color.
Right, a tomato red.
One of the former producers, who comes in all the time, and she asks the best questions. She's not working on the show anymore, so she is an outsider. Although she's seen all they recorded these months ago, so
sure
it drops at noon the next day because they're ready. They don't have to wait for them to sit down and do it. And she's like, "Did you guys really paint that house that color, or was that visual effects?" Like, no, that was visual effects. We wouldn't do that to a real house. The other thing that they said was a visual effect shot, which blew my mind, was I think it was the second episode. There's a long, Breaking Bad and now Better Call Saul are famous for these, like they call them the teasers at the thing at the beginning, and it's usually some kind of artsy fartsy, shot, or even better, they do these like long, like dialogueless scenes of somebody just doing something. Right. And it ends up becoming fascinating. And we watch the whole thing. Well, there's one
it's usually something very mundane too that ends up being incredibly compelling. Yeah.
So I think the second episode, maybe it's the third. Yeah, the second episode starts with this long one where they're emptying out a house.
Right.
One of the
yes.
One of the primary characters. You see them. The cops
are. First, I feel like isn't that the first episode of the season? I feel like it is.
I thought it was the thing for the second, but they both came out. We saw them both the first
night.
Right,
same night.
I think it was episode 2. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, doesn't matter.
But there's this long thing about they're taking all the stuff out of this character's house, and at the very end of it, as the moving truck pulls away, a seemingly insignificant but significant, if you've been following along with the show, one little thing falls off the truck and rolls down the gutter. And then they do a close-up. And she asks Vince, she's like, was that special effects? Was that VFX? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there in the car thinking, that's ridiculous. They couldn't just do that. He's like, yep. He's like, we didn't even attempt. He's like, we knew how many ways that thing could bounce. And we just needed to go there. It's like, it'll save us a hell of a lot more time. And believe me, it'll be easier for somebody to do that than it will be to sit there and try to knock it off the top of the thing over and over again. We're going to break a bunch of them. And even then, when it ends up in the right spot, it's not going to be facing in the right direction. He's like, we didn't even try it. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And they talk about all kinds of stuff. Even in scenes that you don't expect, we'll have, like there's a rainstorm in one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh yeah, the whole storm is fake. But they said it's ironic because the day before we were filming a scene and we had to scrap it because it rained.
It rained, yeah.
It's like, too bad we're not shooting tomorrow's scene today. We wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great. And Vince is funny. He asks a lot of he acts like he doesn't know the answer to these questions. He'll ask. He clearly already knows what they're going to say. He just does it to get them to tell a story. But then his reactions are always. He just seems like the most excited guy when they tell him why they. Oh, that's a great idea. He's like, yeah, whatever. In the most recent episode, they talked about there's a scene where two characters that had never been, they're main characters, but they had never been in a scene together, have one. And Ray had to talk. She's one of them, and she had to talk about how that scene wasn't supposed to take place where it did, and they moved it around a million times, and then how they made the decision right away that you would hear the other person before you ever saw them.
Mm-hmm.
But then she said, "Well, that's not true, because if you go back and rewatch it, you do see him in the background. You're just not looking for him, so you will not see him." So I got to go back and watch to see if, because I was as surprised as everybody. You hear the voice and you know who it is. And he's been sitting there the whole time, and apparently you do see the back of him at one point. But because you're busy actually watching what's really going on in the scene, you don't notice that there's this guy sitting there.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough talking vague about specifically. I just don't want to spoil it. For people who, I know people watch this shit on their own time. I don't want to.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du noch?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So speaking of that, a show that you should be watching, that Jerry West and I watch it together every week. The great HBO show, Winning Time.
Winning Time.
About the 1979-1980 Los Angeles Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
A show that there are a lot of people who don't either think it's a lot of complaints that it's overly stylized.
Well, yeah, there's that, and plus it's a show that's sort of credited with breaking up Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. There's been lawsuits. I mean, there's been copyright infringement. There's been all kinds of drama outside of the show, as well as plenty of drama within the show.
So yeah, for people who don't know, Will and Adam McKay, longtime production partners.
But going back to their days at SNL. Yeah. Yes.
And the big argument came, Will wanted to be Jerry Buss.
Right.
And Adam's like, no, you'll be Will Ferrell. You won't be Jerry Buss.
Mm-hmm.
And then they end up casting John C. Reilly. We think he's going to be John C. Reilly, but he's not. He's Jerry Buss.
He's great.
He's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
He's so much. I mean, he's a great actor, and I love John.
He's a phenomenal actor.
I as soon as I heard that's who it was, I thought, he'll be really good. He's better than I thought he was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, because he could easily. I mean, they make him. If you think about the things they make Jerry do, like he's the comic relief a lot of time, or sometimes he's the only sensible person in the scene. Sometimes he's like the guy you're really supposed to like, and then sometimes he's doing something horrible,
right?
And you like him the whole time.
He's so likable.
Just credit to how good John C. Reilly is, that he can do all the things they need Jerry to do to move the plot along, and you don't either, and you just buy it 100% everything that he does.
There was also a tremendous callback. I think it was 2 episodes ago to Boogie Nights. Do you know what I'm talking about? When John C. Reilly jumps in the pool as Jerry West, right? That's essentially that exact same scene exists in Boogie Nights when John C. Reilly jumps in the pool. So, I don't know how many people picked up on that. There was a tremendous callback from John C. Reilly. And by the way, Do you know who? There's a Chicago connection here. Do you know who Adam McKay's brother-in-law is?
No.
Jeremy Piven.
Oh, well, there you go.
Adam is married to Jeremy's sister, Shira Piven.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, the casting. I know it's a sore spot with you.
Another sore spot with me. Another show I was up for and didn't get.
Other than the role they didn't cast you in, I think they've done a very good job with the casting.
Right. Well, to be fair, there were several roles on that show they didn't cast me in. So
I guess because I thought you would have made a great Kareem.
Yeah,
I don't know why they didn't go with it. I've seen your Skyhook.
It's not bad.
No,
look, I can make it when I have to.
That to me was I just thought, well, the basketball. They're not going to be able to have very much basketball in this because, I mean, what's it going to look like?
But they do, and it's really good. It's really well done.
Now you know who Norm Nixon, who was playing Norm Nixon.
Yeah,
Norm Nixon's son, so that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
But the guy who plays Kareem is not just tall and whatever. He's really good. Like he's really far more likable than real Kareem. They still have him be a dick, but he's more likable than you would expect.
See, I like real Kareem.
Yeah.
I know real Kareem is not a fan of the show. I read his blog on that. Yeah. And look, I respect whatever Kareem says. I totally respect his opinion on that. But I do enjoy, I think the show is great.
The guy who plays Magic, they had to get that right.
Fantastic.
And it was great.
Yeah. Larry Bird.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's where I think, so some of the criticism of the show is that a lot of the things in the show that are depicted are not accurate to real life. Jerry West, of course, has been talked about a lot about how he's sort of depicted in the show as just being this basically dick. And when he was struggling with depression and all that. And thus far we have Magic and Larry just hating each other.
But that's famous that they did until supposedly they went to French Lick to shoot a Converse commercial. That one where they're both on, and they had to actually spend time with each other, and they realized they kind of liked each other. And ever since then, they've, although there's always Magic, I think Magic is right. Magic has always felt like Larry is able to, they don't have to do it anymore, but Larry was always able to turn off his affection for Magic when he needed to. Like Magic is just, so Terry Boers, who's, a famous misanthrope. One of the things he said, you meet a lot of athletes, and most of them are either nothing like what you expect or they really disappoint you. He said, Magic Johnson is Magic Johnson. Yeah. He seems like the nicest guy in the world, and he is.
And that's really what the actor who plays Magic brings to that role. Because he just seems like such an authentically likable dude. You want to root for him. You love Magic in the show.
So for people who might not know, the guy who plays Spencer Haywood is Wood Harris, who was Avon Barksdale on The Wire, and is a graduate of the finest university in the Midwest, Northern Illinois, Illinois University.
Perhaps the country. I wouldn't limit it to
that's true. And his brother, Steve Harris, is also in it. He plays a guy who basically was fine with Magic having sex with his daughter as long as they could get him close enough to Magic where he could become Magic's agent. I think another underrated pair are Magic's parents.
Yes, excellent.
They're both really good.
Wonderful. Cookie, excellent, by the way.
Yeah, Cookie is very good.
Cookie's great. Yeah.
Adrian Brody as Pat Riley, which should not work, but it completely does.
Should not work, but he's so damn good, and it's fantastic. Yes, of course, the great Tracy Letts.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I didn't realize. I mean, I remembered that Paul Westhead was the coach when they won the championship. So when Tracy got cast as Bill McKinney, I remember originally thinking, does he even get the job? Why did Tracy Letts take this job? And then Julianne Nicholson playing the wife. It's like, how do you get two of the best actors in Hollywood for these little roles? Well, it turns out Tracy Letts is not a little role. It's pretty big. Yeah, and he's great.
Yeah.
But I love Jerry West. It's Jason Clarke.
Jason Clarke, yeah.
And Jerry's famously, has always been famously self-loathing. And so having him be mad all the time, and he quit right before the season. He'd been the head coach and he quit. And to me, that none of that seemed that out. I mean, I knew it was exaggerated for effect, for comedic
It's definitely
effect.
exaggerated.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
It didn't make me think less of Jerry West. Actually,
Jerry
and
West,
then it's
however,
funny.
did not like it.
It's
yeah.
funny. So Jerry West throwing a fit and attempting to sue is exactly the kind of shit that Jerry West on Winning Time would do.
That is, yeah.
It's like you're not really disproving it now, Jerry.
Right.
Yeah, I'll try to find it and I could put it with the post. There is Wood Harris is not. Spencer Haywood's 6'8". Wood Harris is not. And there's a photo from the shoot where you could see Wood in the background, and he's wearing Converse that are they're platform Converse that are adding a good 8 inches to him. I don't know how you can walk in those things.
You know who I also think is great, underrated, a smaller part relatively, Michael Cooper.
Yes, he was good.
I love the guy who plays Michael Cooper.
Love what a dick they make Chick Hearn out to be too.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love. Yeah, he's wonderful.
And then the recurring joke too about Chick would hold up his hand as a fist to tell Pat when Pat Riley was he didn't want a color analyst, but Pat talked his way into the job. And then they will occasionally do the whole, or you could go back and let Chick fist you. They make that joke. But yeah, just the fact that Chick is is such an asshole is great.
Yes, he's great.
I mean, I loved him in Fletch, but I always thought he was that he was that way.
Yeah.
So I read the book by Bob Odenkirk, and now I'm reading Brian Cox's book, Putting the Rabbit in the Hat.
Okay.
It's not Brian Cox, who used to play for the Bears.
Different Brian Cox.
Brian Cox from who played the original Lecter, which he insists on spelling it Lektor in the book because that's how it was in the script. So
hey, you know what? Brian Cox can spell it however he wants to spell it. You know what I mean? He's Brian Cox.
Yes. And now he's Logan Roy.
Yes.
It's another book where I probably should get the audiobook because I would like to hear him read his own book.
Yeah.
But in my mind as I read it, he's doing the from his McDonald's.
Yeah, the
commercials,
McDonald's.
Like he's mumbling.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He has some great stories in there. One that's famous is he talks about Jeremy Strong on Succession being a complete method actor, and the great lengths that Jeremy goes to get ready for a scene, and how Brian just kind of rolls his eyes. But he uses it as an excuse to tell the famous Laurence Olivier Dustin Hoffman story from Marathon Man, where Dustin Hoffman insisted on being a character the whole time, and at one point Larry, as Brian calls him, looked at him and said, "Why don't you try acting once in a while?"
Yes, I think it was my dear boy.
Why don't you
try acting?
You try acting?
Yes. Speaking of Adrian Brody, also a phenomenal role in Succession.
Yes, that's right. We almost killed poor Logan.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but it's great, and I've been a Brian Cox fan for a long time because he plays Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter, and
yeah, I've
always preferred that version to the Anthony Hopkins one. To me, that was all. I saw Manhunter first, and that's always been Hannibal to me. He's a great actor, and he tells really good stories. And he will in passing, he will tell a horribly embarrassing story about someone, and then inevitably be like, "Oh, they passed about 3 years ago." In other words, I don't have to apologize. They're dead.
Yeah, right. Nice.
Yeah. So that's a good one. So have you seen? Did you watch Severance? Do you get Apple TV Plus?
I do get Apple TV Plus. I have not watched Severance though.
So Severance is great. It's not good. It's great.
It's great. Okay.
I've even heard like Jimmy Traina was talking about it on his SI Media podcast. Like, I don't like science fiction, so I'm not going to watch it. It's like it's only science fiction in the basic idea behind it, which is there is a company that embeds a chip in your head so that when you're at work, you can't remember it. That's the severed part. You're being severed from when you're at work, you can't remember your life outside of work. And when you're outside of work, you don't remember anything that happened at work.
Okay.
And how this is supposed to be such a great, thing you can, hell, when you're at work, you don't even remember it. You drive in, you go to work, next thing you know, you're back in your car, you go home.
All right.
One of the things they immediately, from the standpoint of the workers, is they're only ever at work. Like, always. Because they only exist at work. Well, it's true that there's some nefarious stuff going on, and but it has Adam Scott is in it. He's really good.
Yeah.
And John Turturro is in it.
The great John Turturro. Okay. Well, now I have to watch it.
Christopher Walken is in it.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
It's I think Ben Stiller doesn't direct them all, but he directs a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really good. So if you haven't seen Severance, you should watch Severance. The other show I like on Apple TV Plus. Have you ever seen the show Central Park?
No.
It's a cartoon.
Okay.
It's a musical cartoon, which doesn't seem like it should be right up my alley.
I was going to say, right, yeah.
But it's really funny. So Catherine Hahn is in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Leslie Odom from Hamilton is in it. So is oh crap, I can't think of his name. The guy from Hamilton who played Thomas Jefferson. Stanley Tucci plays an old woman, Betsy Branningham, and he is absolutely hysterical. The first season, Kristen Bell played the daughter. Leslie Odom and Catherine Hahn are married.
Okay.
In the show, and so the kids are Titus Burgess, and we're Kristen Bell.
Okay.
And Kristen said after the first season, you really should have an actress of color voice the daughter. So they switched, and you forget that within 30 seconds of the first episode of the second season. The person they get is great.
Okay.
Josh Gad plays like the narrator. Basically, the whole concept of the show is that Leslie Odom's character is the caretaker of Central Park, and him and his family live in the castle at Central Park.
Okay.
And Stanley Tucci's character, Betsy Branningham, is this multi-millionaire who owns a hotel. Who from her room she could see Central Park and she decides she's going to buy it. She's going to buy Central Park, and that's that crummy park. We're going to get rid of the crummy park, and we're going to develop it. And that's been the whole plot of the first two seasons, is her inept attempts to buy the park.
And it's a musical?
And it's a musical. And they will break into song, and the songs are always funny. Always. Okay. I don't know who writes these things, but it's amazing. So it's the little half-hour episodes. They are a tremendous amount of fun. So another thing I want to talk about was we are being deluged right now with fictionalized versions of documentaries that we watched already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm a sucker for them, and I watch them all. So I don't remember what the name of I read the book, Bad Blood, and then I watched the documentary on, the Theranos thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's her name? I can't think of her name. Dropped out of Stanford. She's going to start this company. She wanted to be the Steve Jobs of medicine, basically. And her whole idea was, because when she was a kid, she hated getting blood drawn. Why can't they take just a little, like a thimbleful of blood, and run all the tests you need to run? And even better, why couldn't you put a device in your house and you could just do it yourself? And then the results would automatically just go to your doctor, and everything would be great. And it ended up being a horrible scam. And she scammed people like George Schultz. How could you scam poor old George Schultz?
George Schultz, right. Is this Elizabeth Holmes?
Yes,
is that
Elizabeth
her name?
Holmes.
Okay.
Elizabeth Holmes is a ridiculous character in real life. She, at one point, and the way they do it in the movie version is great. The documentary, which is also on Hulu, is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, why do we need 8 episodes of this? Well, it turned out I needed all 8 episodes. Elizabeth Holmes at one point just all of a sudden started talking like this. And she just does, and she does it all of a sudden in the show, and everybody's just like, why is she? Does she have a cold? Why is she?
Right. Why is she
figured out that the people would take her more seriously. Then she started dressing in black turtlenecks because she thought she wanted to look more like Steve Jobs.
Okay.
So Amanda Seyfried plays her, and then she has this her boyfriend Sonny Balwani, which is this guy who helped with the whole ruse. Was this guy who'd come over from India and had founded a company, which he reminds you 1,000 times during the show that he sold for $40 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided to take some classes, and he took some classes at Stanford, and he went on a trip to China, and she was on it with him. That's where they met. He's like 20 years older than her, and they start dating. And for the whole first episode, I kept looking at like, who is the guy playing Sonny? I couldn't place him. Well, it's Naveen Andrews, the guy who played Saeed on Lost. He plays Sonny. And it's Sonny's fat. They barely attempt. He's clearly wearing like a little belly under his shirt. Yeah. So, like, they're not going to make Naveen gain weight, but he's this thing. Yeah, but the whole thing blows up. Sam Waterston plays George Schultz.
Right. Okay.
Trying to think who else was in it that's famous. But I did enjoy that. That one is called, what was the name of that one? The Dropout. So I did enjoy that. Another one that I watched, because same thing, I watched the documentary and I read the book, $1 Billion Loser, about Adam Newman, the guy who created WeWork.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway. His wife, Rebecca, is like the greatest character ever. She is just awful. She is horrible. And I thought Anne managed to capture her awfulness in a perfect way. But that was basically, the ironic thing there is there's no scam there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't scam anybody out of money, other than the fact that, well, maybe he may have scammed banks out of money, but they gave it to him willingly. He didn't misrepresent anything. He didn't do whatever, but he was a charming guy who had a good idea. The whole co-work space. There were a few companies that were doing it, and WeWork made it cool. They bought these lofts and they renovated. They made it seem like a really cool place to go. But he kept doubling down to the point where they were so overextended that by the time they were going to make their big public offering, people digging into the financials are like, they're never going to be able to turn a profit. Mm-hmm. So what the hell is this really worth?
Right.
But they do get into some of the ridiculous things. That her whole thing, she's Gwyneth Paltrow's cousin. Her real name is Rebecca Paltrow, and then Rebecca Paltrow Newman. And she drops that all the time. The great scenes of people rolling their eyes in the background when she drops the Paltrow part is like, or she'll say, well, I was talking to Gwyneth, and Gwyneth says whatever.
Right.
There's a great scene, and it's real because it's also in the documentary, where he finally just tells her off, like, basically, because she's talking about how this company that we founded, and he's like, we didn't found anything. I founded this company, and
right.
You tried. I paid acting lessons for you. I bought you a theater, and you gave up on that. And I made you the chief branding officer of this company, and you've never been able to do that. And now I bought you a school. She starts the school in the thing, which is just this weird hippie bullshit.
Right.
And then she gets mad at him, and then she's mad at him for like an entire episode. But they're still together. The ironic thing is, Jared Leto is not as good looking as Adam Newman is in real life.
Okay.
And Anne Hathaway is a billion times more attractive than Rebecca. So I honestly can see Rebecca watching it and going, "Oh, I look great."
Right.
You look great. That's Anne Hathaway.
That's why I look great. Yeah.
So there's that. I just watched the first couple of episodes of The Staircase on HBO.
Okay. Haven't seen that.
So have you seen the documentary The Staircase?
No.
It's wild. So it's about this guy and his wife. They live in Durham, North Carolina, and he calls 911 in a panic.
Okay.
Because his wife has fallen down the stairs. And she's breathing, but you better get here quick.
Right.
And then he calls back 5 minutes later and says, she's not breathing anymore. You got to get here really quick. And when they get there is blood like everywhere. It's all over. And she has like 7 dents in her head.
Oof.
The ironic thing is, so The Staircase, the documentary, it's on Netflix.
Okay.
And they're actually getting into this in the actual show after he gets arrested for her murder.
Mm-hmm.
A documentary crew from France comes over and covers everything. And they got access to everything, which almost makes me wonder, why do we need the fictionalized version? We saw all this stuff.
Right.
Originally, Harrison Ford was going to play the guy. Now it's
he was too busy flying.
Yes. He was too busy crashing into golf courses. It's Colin Firth.
Right. Okay.
And the way they have his hair, I'm going to watch all these. He's Bill Self. He looks exactly like Bill Self the whole time. Like, Bill Self killed his wife. Toni Collette plays the wife.
Great.
Michael Stuhlbarg is the lawyer. The lawyer is basically the star of the documentary because he's the guy that, he has to explain everything to us, the documentary watchers. So it's a great part for him. He gets to play that. Parker Posey is playing like the
love Parker Posey.
The assistant DA. Who else is in it? I think those are most of the big ones. But the cast is great. We'll see if the story is incredible. It takes twists that you do not expect. Just watch the documentary. It's like, holy crap, how could that have been possibly true? So I know there will be people who will watch this and either not know that there's a documentary and be like, oh, this is all bullshit. No, kids.
No, it's not.
All this crap actually really happened.
And this is on Netflix, the documentary?
The documentary is on Netflix. So one of I'm not spoiling anything. I did see that they throw this out as both sides are trying to figure out what happened the whole time. Because he insists he wasn't in the house when it happened.
Right.
And they've already covered this in the very first episode. The medical examiner in Durham refused to say that she died of blunt force trauma because it's like she doesn't have any skull fractures. If he was hitting her in the head with something, she should have a skull fracture.
Right.
So both sides throw out all these wild hypotheses about how it could happen. One of the hypotheses that they don't make a big deal out of it in the documentary, they do cover it, and it's the one thing you can Google it, and there's all this stuff written about it. There's a theory that she got attacked by an owl. And the funny thing is, the owl theory, which is ridiculous, except in North Carolina, in that part, there are these huge owls, like these gigantic ones, and they do swoop down and attack people. And the theory is, as she was going into the house, the owl clamped onto her head. And so what really happened was she didn't fall down the stairs. She was literally fighting the owl on the stairs. Because one of the things they couldn't explain is that she has cuts on her hands and she has blood under her fingernails. But he didn't have any defensive wounds, and the blood under her fingernails was not his. It was hers. Wow. And then the weird things in her head that they're trying to figure out what made these dents, the talons of the owl would actually fit. It would actually make it. And so that
was she found with a Tootsie Pop in her hand by any chance?
That's right. How many licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Wow.
Yeah, the owl defense was never actually used in
the owl
court.
defense. Yeah, right. The legal, it's a very high legal defense. The owl defense.
And there's 2 trials, and neither trial was the owl defense used. But they did say, I did read a thing, and they said they will talk about the owl. You will get someone at some point, because apparently and I think I know who's the guy who's going to do it. So they show the next door neighbor, and the neighbor is the one who had the owl. Like he wrote this whole paper about it, because that was his theory, was that it was the owl. The guy who plays the neighbor, it took me a while to place him because of the ridiculous hairpiece that he's wearing, is the guy who plays Jerry on Parks and Recreation.
No, okay,
it's hysterical. The voice, I'm like, God, it sounds like Jerry. And then I couldn't, for a few scenes, I couldn't actually see him. And then finally, I'm like, oh, God, that's who they picked. I can't believe they picked him. The other real life thing that I watched, I can't think of the name of it now. I forgot to write it down. It's on Netflix. It's about the supposed Russian heiress who scammed all the people scammed a bunch of bankers in New York out of money. And it's played by the girl from Ozark, who used to be on The Americans.
Okay.
That's great that I can't think of the name of the show. Right. But people will know when they look.
If you've made it this far, people, just Google it. Come on.
The funny thing is, Anthony Edwards is in that, playing a banker who she convinces to give her money.
Mm-hmm.
He also plays a banker in WeCrashed, the WeWork thing, who gives Adam Newman a bunch of money. It's like, so apparently that's what Anthony Edwards does now.
He's typecast now. Yeah. He's no longer Goose.
He gets duped in these true crime stories.
Crazy.
Have you seen We Own This Town?
No, that I do want to. The David Simon.
Right.
Yeah,
I
need.
I haven't had a chance to see episode 2. I saw episode 1. It's every Monday on HBO or HBO Max. And you'll see some of the Wire guys popping back up in it.
Sure.
But the first episode was really good. Is it Josh Bernthal? Is that his? Is it Josh?
John. Jon.
He plays one of the main guys, and then shit. I should have really written some of this stuff down. One of the guys from Sports Night plays the other one.
Okay. Joe Rogan?
No, not Joe Rogan.
It's not Joe Rogan.
But it's about this gun task force that Baltimore put in that was going to help cut down on crime, and instead ended up being just the most corrupt thing ever.
Yeah.
And
sounds
it's true.
Very Wire-ish.
And there's and after the first episode, there's a judge, the judge who oversaw the task force, because they had to keep getting their things, who just threw a fit about what bullshit it is, which means to me immediately, oh, it's all true. Thank you for verifying by throwing a fit. It's basically he's basically the Jerry West of
the show. Nice.
Then the last thing I have is, I'm one of those suckers who during the pandemic got all caught up, watched all the episodes of the F1 series on Netflix. F1 Drive to Survive.
Okay.
People are making a big deal out of this thing, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll watch a couple. And you can't, once you start watching it, you can't stop watching it.
Okay.
It's made F1, which was already the most popular racing league in the world, ridiculously more popular than it even used to. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because F1 to me doesn't feel like a sport. Mm-hmm. It's a TV series and a video game, just merged together.
Right.
So for people who don't follow F1, and I feel like maybe I'm talking to one person.
I'm not a huge F1 guy myself. Yeah.
So there are only 10 teams that race in F1, and each has 2 drivers.
Okay.
So you only have to learn 20 guys. It's smaller than a baseball roster.
Right.
And then there's these people called the principals, which are basically like the general managers, probably, of the teams. And those guys love TV time. And the two most prominent ones are a guy named Toto Wolff, who is the Mercedes guy, and he's kind of this big, handsome German.
Right.
And Christian Horner, who is in charge of the Red Bull team. And Christian Horner, they give these people, they give the documentary crew incredible access. They follow them home. They do whatever. So, like the second episode, you go to this country estate in England with Christian Horner, and you see his wife, and you're looking at her like, I know who that is. Who is that? And you realize it's Ginger Spice. He just happens to be married to Jerry Halliwell.
Nice.
But you get to meet all the drivers, and the drivers are like ridiculously telegenic. It's clear that when they hire the drivers, you need to be able to drive, but you really need to be able to sell stuff. Okay. That's almost as important as actually being able to drive.
Gotcha.
But then when they cover the races, it's ridiculous. There are cameras everywhere. That's why it feels like a video game. Like if you play the F1 video game that EA Sports puts out, it's the same thing.
Really?
You could see there are cameras in the cockpit looking out. There are cameras on the car looking in. There are drones flying over the thing to cover every inch of the racetrack. You can hear the drivers whenever they want. So you can hear what they're saying back and forth, the stuff.
They can break in whenever they want, like Taylor McGregor.
Exactly. No,
yeah.
They should add her to the F1 coverage. So like in Miller Park, right? If a ball is hit into the right field corner, you can't see it. You've never been able to see it. They've never been able to figure out where to put a camera there. You can't see that, but they can go to like a racetrack in Italy, and they can somehow show you every freaking inch of a 2.5 mile racetrack. They can do that.
Right.
So it's incredible. So you watch you watch it, and there's always all this drama. There's all this drama about drivers switching teams or drivers losing a spot. There's one whole subplot about how this Russian oligarch buys a team, and he basically makes, there's only 2 driver spots on the whole team. He makes his son one of the 2 drivers. His son bitches the whole time about how the fact they're setting up his car different than the other guy. The other guy is Max Schumacher, who just happens to be the son of Michael Schumacher, like the most accomplished F1 racer of all time. And they're basically trying to tell him, no, he's Mick Schumacher. He's really good. You suck. That's why your car sucks. The oligarch pulls his money out of the team, and the team almost goes bankrupt. Do
the Rickies get involved at some point or not?
Oh, I'm sure they're trying to buy in. I feel like get Ken Griffin to try to throw some money at one of the teams. They probably could buy Williams, which was this once proud English team that is now always finishing, their drivers always finish 19th and 20th. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
But there are guys in it that are like the head of the McLaren team. The McLaren has the coolest looking cars. They're orange and blue. They're really sharp. A guy named a guy named Zach Brown, not the country singer, but another guy. He's an American. And then there's another guy named Otmar, and he's American. He went to Wayne State University, but he's he was born in Romania or something. And he's one of the team principals. They're all really good. They're it's really interesting to hear them talk. And you meet the drivers, and then it's very noticeable. Like in the first season, the Mercedes guys not really cooperating as much as the other teams. Like you could tell they weren't convinced. And so Lewis Hamilton, who has won 7 championships in a row, is barely in it. Like you wouldn't even know he was one of the drivers. By season 2, he's everywhere. Because clearly, after the first season, somebody said, "We have the most famous driver in the world. I think maybe we should cooperate and get him on the show."
Put him in the show, yeah, exactly.
So the crazy thing about it, so you watch all this stuff, and you're like, I think I'm going to watch the races. The races are the exact same thing. There's cameras everywhere. The other thing is, as the cars got faster over years, they didn't lengthen the races. So these races are 90 minutes long.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
And because they're mostly in Europe, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Right. So by 10:30, you're done.
You're done. But
the way they cover them, they'll do an hour. They're on ESPN, but it's actually the Sky Sports feed from Europe. Everybody mills around on the track up until the guys are getting in the cars, and they're still hey, let's get a quick interview with a driver, Daniel Ricciardo, and he'll talk to him. He's like climbing into the car, and he'll talk to him.
Wow.
But then when they cover the race, that also feels like the video game, because everything you need to see is always there. And when they need to go in, like when one car passes another one, they immediately go to replay they can show you replays from inside both cars, and so they will. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous just how much access you have. So I can see why that sport has gotten popular, because it's super easy to follow. You really don't even have to know all 20 guys. There's like 4 really good teams. You know those 8 drivers, you're set. So
and it's like
that's
half the time of a baseball game. It's
half the time of a baseball game.
Yeah. Well, now next time when we talk, you have the George Carlin documentary is coming out. So
we'll talk
about that. With Judd Apatow. Yeah.
All right. So is there anything you're watching that I didn't hit on my master list here?
I think you've hit everything. Ozark, of course. If people should watch Ozark. But we've hit the biggies, I think. Yeah.
Well, good. I hope there's at least a few things people are like, oh, I'll give that a shot. It's all good.
Ozark, 1883, Oh, no,
I got one more recommendation, which I have already written about this once in the newsletter. The 2 biggest fans of the show appear to be Maureen Ryan, who used to write for the Tribune and now writes for which one of your trade publications out there? Not the Hollywood Reporter, the other. Variety. I think she writes for
Variety. Okay.
We both love the show. It's a show called The Great Pottery Throwdown.
Okay.
It's on HBO Max, and it's comfort food watching. It's literally, they get these, like, I think they start with a dozen aspiring potters in England.
Mm-hmm.
And they do these challenges every week, and they have to vote. Somebody gets booted every week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really funny. If you go back and start watching on the very first season, some of the potters weren't very good. Like, it's very clear that after the first season, a bunch of really good potters are like, shit, I should be on this show. Now they're all really good.
So it's like Survivor for people that make pots?
It is.
Okay.
And so you're like, well, that seems stupid. But I don't know. It's very, very relaxing. Everybody's cool. They all like each other. Like, there are no squabbles. Like, they get genuinely upset when one of them has to go home.
Right.
But the star of the thing is a guy named this big judge named Keith Reimer Jones. He's this big dude, and he cries all the time.
The drop of a hat.
Yes. Like, somebody will make something, he'll look at it, and he'll just think it's the greatest thing in the world, and he'll just be so proud of them that he'll start crying. And then they start crying because he's crying. But one of the things that's really cool about the show is when there's certain challenges that he will demonstrate to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just see how freaking good he really is. So it makes it, then when he like gets all excited about them doing something, it means more. Because it's not like some, you could just tell like how proficient he really is. He'll do these things with like they a couple of times a season they'll do a thing where they have to wear blindfolds while they're spinning the wheel and doing their stuff. And he does it, and he just zips right through it and puts it up. And then you watch them all struggle with it, and there's shit flying everywhere, and it's great.
Right.
So there's 3 main characters other than the thing. There's there's 4. So there's Keith, the judge, and there's the other judge, who I can't remember his name. That's how good he is. But he's relatively new. He used to be the guy who ran the kiln. He worked his way up to judge, and he's good.
Wow. Okay.
The new person who does the kiln is, you just have to see this person. When they get to like season 4, it's just, it's amazing. And then there's a host, and it's always been, it's always been a woman. The one who did the first 2 seasons was really funny, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. But season 3, she's gone. Well, it turns out that it changed networks in England, and so they went with somebody, and then they had just a gorgeous host for that 3rd season, just incredible. They got rid of her after the 3rd season, and they got this. They had a comedian, this lady named Siobhan, who I thought, this is going to suck. She's genuinely funny. But they start this season that just dropped on HBO. The whole thing is there. People can watch the whole thing. She does like the intro, And basically it says that right before filming, she fell down and broke her leg in 2 places and is going to miss the first half of the season. So she has a fill-in. And I stared at the fill-in for like half the first episode, trying to figure out who it was. And do you watch Ted Lasso?
Mm-hmm.
So Ted's boss's friend, the one he sleeps with, it's her.
It's her?
It took me a while. I'm like, oh, it's the one who Ted Lasso had sex with.
Nice.
She's also very funny. But she's filling in. She's the interim host until some point later in the season when Siobhan will take over.
Gotcha.
I think that's it, except for also on HBO Max, there's a show about a dog rescue in England where they try to pair. People come in and they try to rescue a dog and they pair them with the dog and whatever. And the show is just great. If you like dogs at all, you'd love that show.
Right.
Breaks your heart when the fosters fail and the dog comes back, but usually they get placed. I can't think of the name of that show, but people should go look for that one too.
Well, there's plenty to watch. Plenty to watch.
That's all I got. Yeah, you only have 24 hours in the day.
Yeah.
But put 2 TVs next to each other, and you can knock these off 2 at a time.
There you go. Nice. All right.
That's all I got.
Me too.
What we got? An hour and 40 minutes of me babbling about. Yep. Me babbling about TV shows that you're like, that's great. I'm not on that. I don't care.
You've stopped recording, I take it?
No, still on.
Oh, you're still going. Okay. Yes. There we go.
All right. Well, yes, we were just talking before we got on that it is well beyond time. We are going to pick up the movie deep dives again.
Yes.
And so here in the relatively near future, we will be doing Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein coming at you.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, until then.
All right, Annie. Good talking to you.
Well, thanks, Mike.
We'll see you then.
Many of us have herpes.